What's up, guys? It's been a while, I know, but we're here to talk about Tales of the Jedi. And let me just say, every episode was like a 10 out of 10. Maybe me fanboying, but every episode was absolutely phenomenal. First one with Ahsoka and seeing her village, mom and parents and all that good stuff was really intriguing. Although the first episode probably was the slowest out of the bunch, it still holds an incredible backstory to one of the characters that we love most, which is Ahsoka Tano. And like once we get into like the actual series, kind of get to see more, and it's just so beautifully done. That first episode was incredible because you can see where Ahsoka gets her tenacity from. Definitely her mom, like she squared up with that saber-toothed tiger looking thing. You can see how strong Ahsoka is in the Force, and that kind of foreshadows her abilities in the future when you see it in the Clone Wars and like all the live action stuff. It makes the Mortis arc make a little more sense. Because, you know, she's obviously chosen by the daughter, and that's one of her guardians that follows her around. I just thought it was really cool because we don't really see the younglings that much in the Star Wars franchise, or like their process of selection, or like how they're chosen. And the couple times that we do see the younglings, it's not a good look at all. Moving on to like the second episode, we see a young Count Dooku and a young Qui-Gon, and I was stoked. The coolest thing about this is you get to see both of their dynamics, and you can see how Dooku is still actively struggling with the darkness inside of him, and how he really hates corruptness. And which is kind of funny to think about because he ends up being a Sith Lord and helping Sidious. But you can really see his actions were kind of from a good place. Like he had good intention for his actions because he thought, you know, the council was corrupt, the Jedi were corrupt. He hated dirty politicians really because he came from that. If you read, I think the book is called Dooku Lost. He gives a whole backstory about Dooku's actually filthy rich and came from royalty. And when his family found out he had the Force and the ability to use that, they looked at him like this alien almost, and like this disgusting creature. Him dealing with a corrupt politician brought out that darkness in him, and you see that, and you see him literally throw Qui-Gon to the side, and he's just overwhelmed and literally about to end this politician's life. If it wasn't for Qui-Gon's quick thinking, he would have definitely just yeeted that guy out of there. One of the coolest moments, I think, is at the end of that episode. You see Dooku and Qui-Gon have this bit of dialogue, and Dooku really says, you know, you're much wiser than me. It gets more into that in the series, but you see how deeply connected Qui-Gon and Dooku actually were and how strong their relationship was. And it makes the scene in Attack of the Clones where he's talking to Obi-Wan saying, I wish Qui-Gon was here, I could really use his help. It has a lot more weight behind it now because you can genuinely see that Dooku loved Qui-Gon and that he had a strong bond with him. Wow, yeah, that third episode was sick because you see Windu and Dooku, before they're Jedi Masters on the Council, deal with one of their own members getting killed. And if it weren't for Dooku, you wouldn't have found out that it was actually, you know, a setup this whole time. And seeing Dooku and Windu's like lightsaber abilities side by side and just how skillful and masterful they were, it's just like out of this world, because you have to remember Dooku was Yoda's apprentice, arguably the best saber wielder in the galaxy, and Dooku is on par with that. He uses Form 2. It's not a form taught really, and he uses Form 2 so masterfully it throws everybody off because they genuinely don't know how to use it. You see Windu and his abilities. He's always been gifted with a saber as well, but you kind of also see this two-faced side to Windu, because at the end of it, Dooku and Windu have this dialogue, and it kind of further cements Dooku's distrust with the Jedi Council, because Windu was set on the Council and not Dooku, because Dooku, you know, killed someone even though they were fighting in self-defense. And it seems like Windu didn't stick up for Dooku at all. So Windu was given the seat on the council because a Jedi Master had just died, and you see this banter back and forth, and Windu is pretty sleazy, I'm not gonna lie. It kind of painted him in a different picture. We don't really get much backstory on him, in canon at least, to how he acts and who he is and things like that. But you can kind of see he's playing the game, and I just thought that was interesting. Now in the next episode, we see Dooku lose Qui-Gon as, you know, an apprentice. I mean, he's a Jedi Master himself, but he loses Qui-Gon because Qui-Gon finds and fights Darth Maul. And you also get to see like a scene before that where Dooku is erasing Kamino from the archives to where it can't be found on a map. And you can see this turmoil within Dooku because he's done so much, but he lost someone so close to him. And you also get to see Master Yaddle, which is cool because we don't have much on her. But she ends up following Dooku when he goes to meet Sidious, and Dooku is genuinely upset, like this wasn't supposed to happen. He's on the fence on both sides. He doesn't like the Jedi, but now this wasn't supposed to happen either, so he doesn't know what to do. Yaddle then just squares up on both Sidious and Dooku, and her and Dooku have this epic duel. It seems that, you know, at the end of it, Dooku has killed her, and Sidious, you know, does the whole rise my apprentice and, you know, makes Dooku a part of the, you know, the family. At the very end, Yaddle throws up the door that had been slammed on her and gives it one last go, and Dooku strikes her down in just like cold blood. And it's a very heavy scene because you can tell that was Dooku's last step. Like he was gone after that point and becomes, you know, kind of the monstrous Sith Lord that we know in Attack of the Clones and Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. And it's interesting because they pulled some dialogue, I don't think word for word, out of the Darth Plagueis novel, and I don't know, painted the picture between Dooku and Sidious really well. Now then, the last few episodes are just with Ahsoka. We see Anakin train Ahsoka and push her to the limits, and it's actually kind of interesting because if he hadn't have done this and made her train with the clones, she would have died in you know, when Order 66 happened. It's interesting to see that, and it's just so beautifully done because you see Ahsoka training time after time after time with the clones and keeps going even though she gets knocked down. Then it flashes forward like years and years, and she has kept up this training the whole time. Bro, when the emotions that I felt, it's kind of funny because this is, you know, quote unquote kids cartoon, but when it cut to season 7 where her and Rex are trying to escape the ship, and he says, I hope all of that training pays off, and they, you know, walk into the sequence that we know from season 7, man, it was bravo, Dave Filoni, bravo. And then the last one I thought was also really well done. You see Ahsoka at Padme's funeral, and we won't see her in Revenge of the Sith film, but it's cool to know that she's at least in canon had like showed up to her funeral. And then it cuts to where she's, you know, probably a couple of years later or a year later, if that, it seems pretty soon after the events of Revenge of the Sith. She is working, these seems to be like hay farmers almost, and they're working for the Empire. The secret gets out, she saves someone with the Force that's about to get crushed. Word gets out and she's turned over to the Empire, and an Inquisitor comes to inspect the situation and burns the whole village to the ground. It's an incredible scene. Also the mask, I think this is the 6th brother, don't quote me on that, I'll correct it if that's wrong. Burns basically this whole village to the ground, and Ahsoka is not there at the time, and she comes back. She squares up with this Inquisitor with no lightsaber, nothing, and just absolutely like Neo style, just dodges his saber, takes his own saber, and just kills him. And in the beginning of this episode, she has a conversation with Bail Organa, and he says, call me if you need anything. So she has to obviously take these people into hiding because the Empire is going to be on their way to investigate why an Inquisitor was just destroyed. And that was literally the coolest, like, some people have been saying like, oh, I wish that sequence was longer, they hyped it up, it looks so cool. Like, no, dude, she's had so much training over the years. She was Anakin's apprentice. I think it was done perfectly. She was like, you literally have no training almost, and just dodged the saber and killed the person with his own saber. Killed the 6th brother with his own saber. And so then at the end of it, like I said, she has to get these people into hiding, so she calls Bail Organa. He comes and helps and asks her, you know, are you sure you're ready to get back in the fight? And you see that kind of fire burn inside of Ahsoka again. And overall, insane. I think it was a 10 out of 10. I was kind of worried with events such as like Andor, which I'll do another video on, and Kenobi, I'll do another video on, and I think this is a really good step forward. And once again, it kind of solidifies how necessary Dave Filoni is to this franchise, because anything that Disney gets a hold of in terms of Star Wars, for some reason, they just throw it in the toilet and they flush it down. Dave, time and time again, has shown that he knows what to do with this story, and did so with an animation style. And that's another thing, like the cinematography, albeit in like a 3D spectrum, the whole show is just gorgeous. The music really pulls you in. It feels like Star Wars. It's not like the, you know, dumpster fire that was Kenobi, and you're like, what music is this? All together, incredibly well done. It makes me excited for future projects. I hope they do a Tales of the Sith, or at least another season of Tales of the Jedi. I think that would be cool. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna try to do this again. I'm gonna try it again. So hit the like button, hit subscribe, stay tuned, and thank you guys for watching.